Expelled South African ambassador to the US, Ibrahim Rasul, is expected to meet with International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola in Pretoria today. Rasul arrived back in the country to a hero's welcome yesterday after Donald Trump's administration declared him persona non grata. Let's take you live now to the seat of government and to Newzroom Afrika's Ziyanda Ngobo, who joins us from the Union Buildings. Ziyanda, good afternoon to you. If you thought you would see an Ibrahim Rasul returning to South Africa with his tail between his legs, that is absolutely not what happened yesterday.
Absolutely, Michelle. But I mean, there's mixed reviews about whether or not that hero's welcome was a wise move, given how there's already a tense relationship between South Africa and Pretoria, and now the separation of party and state, which is not something that the U.S. government usually does. Wow, this would be interpreted by the Donald Trump administration. In fact, you would have seen, a social media post from Trump just yesterday, talking about cutting off aid, which seems to have been in response then to some of the comments that Rasul would have made yesterday, where he says he does not regret the remarks that he had made when that actually led up to him being declared a persona non grata, but also that South Africa must not renege on its principles of Ubuntu and its Ubuntu diplomacy as it now tries to find a successor. Lots of debates then about who should replace Rasul, how soon this should happen, and is this going to be something that is decided upon solely by the president, or is it going to be within the purview of the government of national unity? And on that note, let's bring in then Prof. Dirk Kotze to talk about that, because I think a lot of the debates at the moment has been, well, we need each other. South Africa and the United States have mutually beneficial interests. However, there is a sense that maybe the South African government needs to send a white man for it to be taken seriously.
Yeah, I think it's actually premature to think about these things also of who should go. What I expect what is going to happen is that there will be quite some time being used by the government, that means the government of national unity, and then very specifically the office of the president here and where we are at the Union Buildings, about looking at, first of all, to make a proper analysis of what is the situation and the trends and tendencies in the US, what can we expect as a country, South Africa, for the foreseeable future, in which direction it is going, and then to look at someone who will be most appropriate for that. And not what the US wants, but what is actually in the interest of South Africa in the first instance, but at the same time a person who will play that role of a diplomat. I personally am much more in favor of someone who is a career diplomat than a political appointment. Unfortunately, in the last number of years, they were all political appointments, and I think this is part of the problem, is that for a position like Washington, D.C., which demands so much diplomatic knowledge and skills and understanding, a politician is simply not useful in order to be there. But I understand that there's a way of looking at it to say it's one of the most prominent stations, destinations, diplomatic missions, and therefore there should be someone prominent from a political point of view.
I mean, speaking of someone prominent from a political point of view, there are many names that are being bandied about: Andrew Snell, Tony Leon, and we'll get to the part about what the GNU, how they should deal with this matter. But I mean, there are two vacancies on both sides. Here in South Africa, there isn't a U.S. ambassador to South Africa, and vice versa with the return of Ibrahim Rasul. Does that those two gaps and vacancies make it more difficult for us to be able to resolve this tension? Or, I mean, these missions pretty much run themselves, and whoever becomes ambassador is more of a figurehead and a political appointee, as you've just intimated?
Well, I don't think we should think that the solution will be found in Washington, the South African embassy in Washington. It's going to be done here, and it will be at the Dirk headquarters and here at the presidency. That's where the decisions are made. That is where it is determined what should be the approach of the embassy in Washington. That is also where they will determine what will be the type of persons. Because remember, we have actually two missions in the US. The other one is at the United Nations, which is a very strong one. Now, I'm actually surprised that they don't use them more, because there's quite a number of diplomats there who, with lots of experience in diplomacy. So in the meantime, our embassy in Washington continues. It's not as if it was a one-man show. There's a whole staff component there, and they can continue. They are the staff of Dirk Kotze and of the Home Affairs and Intelligence and others who are supposed to do their more specialized work. So it's not as if there's a real vacuum. The same applies to the American embassy here. They continue irrespective of whether there's an ambassador or not. So I don't think we must try to feel that there's such an urgency in order to appoint these positions. It's rather now take a very considered decision to the best interest of all of us.
As we speak, Prof, we understand that Ibrahim Rasul is at the OR Tambo building where he is going to debrief with Minister Ronald Lamola. Of course, those are his headquarters and where he has to report first. But given the comments that he even made at that rally at the Cape Town International Airport, that he doesn't regret his remarks, that there should be a continuation of the Ubuntu diplomacy. I mean, does that not put the minister, the president, and this government in an awkward position, given how there is this belief that in the US they don't necessarily separate party and state?
Yes, I think you are absolutely correct. Ideally speaking, he should have not said anything at the airport. He should have just arrived and sort of greeted all his friends and acquaintances and so on, but did not making any type of statement like he did. Because that is in a sense perpetuating what he did at the Mistra webinar. You know, what many people don't understand is that the ambassador is not a politician. The ministers and the presidents and so on, they are the political side of it. And the ambassador plays a very specific role. And I think where he failed is that he did not draw that distinction between his role as a politician, which was what he has been all the years, and the role of an ambassador, which is a much more facilitative type of person, and not so much a person who talks about policy or tries to make policy or to determine policy in the context of an embassy. That's simply not the role of an embassy.
And given how there is still going to be a replacement for him, the South African government through the presidency spokesperson Vincent Magwenya have said the president is not in a rush to fill that vacancy. However, what kind of characteristics should the next person have? And is this something that the government of national unity is supposed to be debating, or is this really the prerogative of the president?
Well, the government of national unity can debate it. There's no reason why they can't do that. But I think what is not expected of the government of national unity is that they take the decision. It is, constitutionally speaking, the decision of the president to ultimately decide. But I think it will be good if they develop some form of consensus about who are maybe the short list of persons. But the final decision will be the president's decision.
All right. So, I mean, there's still quite a bit of time, according to Prof. Dirk Kotze, for the president to really apply his mind on who he should send. But of course, 2 vacancies on both sides either way, and that the missions still continue to operate. But already lots of debate about who would be suitable to replace Ibrahim Rasul and whether or not this will actually help quell those tensions between Washington and Pretoria.
Sienna Ngobo, live to us there in Pretoria. Thanks very much indeed.